going to cause much impact. Why? Because the history of corruption in this country, sometimes things are done in total secrecy, and we should learn a lot more from the other experiences and build an environment where, one, the citizens feel that sense of ownership and they can participate, but also the people charged with the responsibility of executing have to do it in the most transparent way. Those are two. But my brother Charles, just as you raise it, indeed, there is a lot of expectation. And to be very honest, I think a lot has been done, just as my brother Omara said. The different laws that were passed by Parliament, I think Parliament did a commendable job. And I think you, the technical people, are also doing a commendable job. But we need to go further than that. Yes, there are promises that are being made. Look at the construction of this pipeline, which is going to be, by the way, the longest in the world. All right? The heated pipeline is going to be the longest in the world, about 1,445 kilometers. And we are told that about 150,000 jobs have been reserved for Ugandans. Now, we should walk the talk, because the problem we have here is that looks like in this country what we say is different from what we do. I think I would love to see us begin to do exactly what we say. If we have jobs for 150,000 Ugandans, that's very good. That's awesome. But how do we make sure that Ugandans begin to feel that indeed there are those jobs and they're reaping from it? The East African, you know, the recent law that we came up with, the ECOP, all right, the East African crude oil pipeline that Parliament passed, gives a lot of opportunities. But there is that fear. There is the law that we all know, but there is also how we do things in this country. And so we need to make sure we are able to appreciate the fact that Ugandans expect so much from this. And because how do we say that we are going to create a very conducive environment for Ugandans when a company that should provide, recently I was reading, where, you know, they posted on the media a picture of, I think, a chef from one of the Arab countries, that, you know, there is a company coming to provide this. And I think if we are saying there are services that will be for Ugandans, we need to make sure we don't deviate from that. But I'm sure there are a lot that will be happening, you know, down there without Ugandans knowing. So my emphasis is, how do we begin to build confidence? How do we begin to do the things that Ugandans will begin to appreciate and they feel part and own the process? Finally, Charles, you know, the gentleman who spoke before, sorry, I forgot your name. Peter, exactly, Peter. Peter talked about so much money which is already, you know, a lot of money being committed. Exactly, committed.
12 billion.
I know that the construction and development stage of this pipeline alone is going to cost about $3.5 billion, all right? Billion dollars. US dollars. It's going to cost that. But remember, about 60% of that money is going to be borrowed money, all right? And 40% is going to be in form of equity, okay? And so if we are going to be spending so much money, we should then have that sense of responsibility to do a good job, so we can recover whatever is being spent and we are able to pay what is being borrowed. Otherwise, we are going to borrow so much and then we don't do a good job. We abuse the entire process. We don't get what we have to get as a country. And then our grandchildren will have to pay the price. So I think it's important. Yes, there is excitement, there are opportunities, but how do we do a good job? And that is where Ugandans feel there is so much lacking.
Sarah, should we be optimistic for the oil industry, for the oil coming out, for the oil being a game changer? $2 billion every year that we expect for the projections. I remember I read somewhere the projections by, I think, IMF, that the potential for Uganda's oil flow will give us almost $2 billion every year for almost 20 years.
Charles, for your information, the expected total oil revenue that will come from these enclaves after 25 years will be around $22 billion.
About $22 billion. That's billion. About 77 trillion shillings, going by the current exchange rate.
Yeah. So in 25 years, you're getting 22 trillion. So it's far below the figure you're mentioning.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not a very big amount, and that is the price put at what? $75 per barrel?
No, 50.
$50 per barrel, and I think the eco bill on taxes gives us leeway if the price per barrel goes beyond $75.
Yes.
Yeah. So if the price goes to $75, then that amount will go beyond the $22 billion.
Okay.
But I will come back to mention my
How you feel?
my numbers on this.
The numbers.
Yes.
Number crunching is going to come. Good. No, I'm gearing for that. Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, it's a very good prospect, very good opportunity for the country, and citizens are rightly excited, although the wait has been long. Oil is black gold. If managed well, it will revamp the development of this country. But managing oil well, especially given our background of bad governance and misgovernance at several levels and in several government projects, so the trust levels between the citizens and the people speaking so well are very low. Well, government can build confidence by doing the right thing. The starting has been turbulent. We know how many cases in national and international courts we have been battling as a country. We've made losses, we've made some wins. The challenges of evidence that came through court, including international courts of corruption, of taking small needs of some leaders. A heritage called it urgent needs, that they were told to take care of urgent needs. So the confidence levels are very low, given the journey we have walked so far. So given that background, I think as a country, we can either decide to court the journey of an oil curse, or decide to play by the rules and do what is expected of us and deliver this country and deliver the socio-economic transformation that our black gold should indeed and rightly deliver. Honorable Paul talked about the amendments of the Public Finance Management Act, or what was commonly known as spending at source. Is it 7% of the money that SNOC can spend at source?
Yeah.
UNOC, sorry. Yeah. Yes, Peter, that you can spend at source.
I will explain it.
Yeah.
Yes, you will explain it. So that even caused, some shivers amongst the population. Because as much as you need money to pay for your equity shares and equitable roles in this investment, how is it allocated? Can't it be allocated through normal budget procedures? Can't it be, did we need, was it necessary to allow you to spend at source? And maybe the MPs can clarify to the people. does how the appropriation role of Parliament.
Would it be different from the normal budget? Because even in normal budget, once it is allocated, they can spend, isn't it?
But why was it necessary to do that amendment exactly?
That's the issue now.
Yes, you will explain.
Yes.
So that one also, made people
Peter,
say, okay.
you have to take notes.
Yeah, you know when you are being hit by rain, any change in the skies really scares you. So was it
Once bitten.
So was it necessary to tinker with the Public Finance Management Act to create that provision? Because citizens were wondering, we all know the importance. If we have an equitable role to play, nobody would imagine that Parliament would fail to appropriate such monies. So why was it necessary to amend the Act to create for those provisions of spending at source? Then the environmental and land compensation concerns also contributed, of course, to the delay, the long journey of exploring oil, concerns that delayed the possible investors and partners in our oil journey. And some of these concerns are still prevalent. Some of the environmental assessment reports by both the three projects, Terenga, Kingfish, and the crude and oil pipeline, all of them have environmental gaps. And the oil pipeline project, there's still some turbulence on land compensation. So what are we doing best, given that we have taken this time, the wait, since 2006 to 2022, those are about 16 years. 16 years of our oil journey. What have we learned from our experiences? How have we prepared to act better?
We have learned patience.
Yes, I know that finally on 12th August 2020, Uganda became a member of the AITI, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. But there are some contracts that are still not public. So how are you working that journey? Are you doing the usual games of just signing and ratifying documents and then coming and hoodwinking citizens? Are we ready to walk the talk and play by the rules, or we are doing the usual games? So I think, to me, these are really the concerns, and I'm sure the concerns of many Ugandans. What are you doing best? What have you learned over the 16 years? How are you acting better?
Okay, Peter, there is a lot that is on your table to respond to. You start with the last one. Are you hoodwinking citizens?
I think I would confidently say that one of the key lessons we've learned over the 16 years is not to hoodwink anyone, is to be as transparent, forthright as possible. And I'm sure the two honorable members here can confirm that when we were dealing with the bills last year, we were open on every aspect of those bills. And we had very good conversations across the political divide, actually, I should say. And we eventually came out with the bills that enabled us to move to FID with consensus. But let me just paint a picture of 2006 to today. It will take a short while. So in 2006, there was a discovery of commercial volumes. By 2008, we were speaking of 320 million barrels.
Yes.
That's what we're dealing with. It was commercial in volume, but really small. And at that point, when you have 320 million barrels, you're thinking of a different commercialization plan. You can't construct a pipeline, for instance, for that volume. It's too small. And we're looking at converting it to power. So that was the commercialization plan. And then more work was done. By 2012, we had now bigger volumes. We're looking at 6.5 billion barrels.
Yes.
The commercialization plan changes at that point, because these volumes now are too much for just conversion to power.
Is that the volume that took it to? Is it the fourth on the continent? That Uganda is the fourth after Angola, Nigeria, and
It's still small. We are still way below.
okay.
Angola, Nigeria, Algeria, I believe even Equatorial
Libya.
Guinea, Libya, we are behind. But it's significant volume, 6.5. So at that point, the commercialization plan had to change. So we now have a period of discussion with the international companies on what the commercialization plan should be, looking at the volumes that we had at that point. And then we agree that we shall have 3 commercialization avenues. 1, the pipeline, 2, the refinery, and 3rd, crude to power. But we've since dropped crude to power because we are doing very well on the power generation side. So we have these 2 commercialization plans. But remember, as my colleague Hani Malinga said, we were in the process of now putting in place good laws. Why? Because we realized from benchmarking that many countries that found oil quickly went into production without a strong legal structure. So we had to go through a policy framework, the 2008 oil and gas policy that became laws in 2013. But after the laws that regulate upstream and midstream, it was clear to everybody that there was a gap. These laws regulate how you get the crude and how you sell the crude to get the revenue. But how do you manage that revenue? Because many countries had failed in that aspect as well. So we had to have the 2015 Public Finance Management Act that has specific provisions on how to manage oil revenue. And at that point, the picture is complete. You have a good legal framework, you have alignment with the parliament and all the leadership and the citizenry. At that point, you can now discuss commercials. So now we enter into commercial negotiations with the oil and gas companies because we had a legal framework to base on our negotiations. And that took a while, tons and tons, and finally we are here, ready to proceed. Why we are confident now is because we have done what we need to do to ensure that oil becomes a blessing to Ugandans.
And not a curse.
And not a curse. And we have done it learning from countries that have probably not done it so well. So we have the advantage of learning from those who have gone ahead of us. So what I can give confidence to the people of Uganda is that we've taken care of how revenues will be managed. We have probably one of the strongest regimes on environmental matters in oil and gas. We have probably one of the strongest regulatory structure, even in terms of governance, where you have an independent regulator who is not involved in any other task other than regulating the industry. We've gone through periods of empowering Ugandans, training technocrats in government so that we are not being laid like sheep. We know what we're doing. And so that period of empowering government, civil servants in all the relevant entities was a good investment. It took time, but it was necessary. And so after all these are done, we enter negotiations. And I can say I've been really in the middle of these negotiations that we've put in place a very reasonable commercial structure to develop the project, but also benefit Uganda. And what we are looking at is a lot of revenue coming. And Honorable Mara has touched the revenues that will come. But the numbers he has provided really relate to the revenues that will go directly to government from sale of its crude oil entitlement. But there's a lot of other revenues that will come from the macroeconomic impacts that these projects are going to have on the economy. The many Ugandans who are going to get jobs will pay taxes, will consume. The many Ugandan entities that are going to get jobs, that are getting jobs today, you've heard Excel has a $23.3 million contract. All these are going to spend, to pay taxes, and they're going to invest here. So there is a macroeconomic impact that will definitely increase government revenue beyond the direct revenue that government is going to get from selling crude. Confidence among Ugandans. I think we can do more, and we should all work together to communicate more to Ugandans. And for me, the key thing we need to communicate right now is that the opportunity is real. we are not going backwards. Construction is a scientific matter. You know that this project will take 4 years of construction. And that's what we have calculated. And once that construction is done, the crude will be pumped out, and it will go to the international market. But the point of opportunity for Ugandans largely sits in this period of construction, because that's where all this money that we have committed is going to be spent. So it's time for Ugandans to properly kulembeka. And we've put, given in the laws, we've put priority for Ugandans.
Remember, this is a national TV, so when you say Kulembeka, you know, the voters of Omara and
I was beginning to ask myself
and
what he's talking
Mapenduzi,
To make money. To make
even
money.
starting with them, they may be asking, what does it mean to Kulembeka?
I shall explain it.
You know, the moment you decide to continue that way, I will start using our local language. I'll use
I will not allow that on national TV.
My apologies. I've actually adopted it from politicians, because
Yes.
politicians use this word a lot. So, but basically, it's
with Kakuyege.
Yes.
The two together.
Yes.
but basically the idea is that the opportunity is here. It's time for us to tap in.
Yeah.
And it's also time for all of us to put our hands on the deck. Civil society, politicians from both sides, to just make sure that we make this project happen. $16 billion of investment in 4 or 5 years is the first of its kind in the history of this country. It is going to absolutely have impact on employment.
That's for every year.
Yeah, it's going to have absolute impact on employment, the value chains that are going to be created, the incomes of people, the income of the state. And so we all need to support one another in ensuring that we make this project happen. On the environmental point of...
Before you go to the environmental aspect, because I think we need to also touch on the issue of climate change dynamics as well, which is speaking to the future, you know, safety, environmental safety of our people. But isn't there a kind of a false start? You speak well, you explain well those prospects, those optimistic signs, but then there is a story that Mapenduzi was referring to. Was it 2 weeks ago, just after the FID signing? Then there is a report that an Indian company, was it an Indian company or something, wins the contract for catering.
For catering.
For cooking.
Actually,
you
just
know,
to-
that is how Ugandans look at it.
You know, Charles,
That's
just
a
to
contract
actually-
for cooking.
I was coming to that, Charles.
No,
Because,
maybe before he comes in, you know, you see, when we say some of these things, we say out of experience, but also fear. You made mention that right now there is a local company called Excel, right? Excel that has, I think, $23 million or something. You mentioned that.
Excel
Excel
construction, I think.
Excel something.
It's a construction
You
company.
see, part of the fear some of us have is that, one, in this country we allow people, foreigners, to come and the next day they turn themselves into locals. And then we call them locals. It would be important for us to know really this Excel company, whether it's really local, who are the owners of these companies. But without asking much, because I know.
But Honorable Mapenduzi, isn't that your role in Parliament to dig out and just come and tell us, because you are an MP and a chairman at that of a big committee, local government, isn't that your role to dig out with facts, with documents, and then you come here and lay it before us and say, Charles, we as MPs, as a committee...
I fully agree.
Yes.
My brother,
Because I am also fearful that you should not describe or express fear here when you are an MP.
Charles,
let
maybe
me first answer him.
Yes.
Let me answer him.
Yes.
You have rightly put it, Charles. There is a way Parliament works,
Yeah,
and I'm sure these informations will come.
yeah.
And I'm sure the relevant committee, the responsible committee will be able to handle, you know, take through
And
the
that's
processes
the facts.
and will come to Parliament finally. So we will definitely be able to talk about that. But since
and for me, sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
I think now that we are talking some of these things, Peter talks about transparency
Exactly.
to build the confidence, and we're trying to ensure that, especially for me, my passion is about the opportunities available for young people. We shall shortly be talking about the opportunities for SMEs, because they are the largest unit in this country, and they should be helped to access some of these opportunities. So for me, my passion is and concern is that especially the 40% local content should be adhered to. So I think that my plea will rest with more of you MPs
That's right.
to
That's
do
right.
that, so that then you can act as a check and balance against what the Peters and Malingas are failing to do, right?
Yes, Charles.
But just
As Peter is a great man. And when we were having the discussion on the ECOP and the amendment of Public Finance Management Act, I think he put the matters in a very nice way, and as a committee, we really supported him to have those laws amended. But that said, we also emphasized the proper management of the local content law. And the local content law is really what Honorable Mapendezi has talked about.
Yeah.
The Ugandan, as we know it,
Yeah.
the Black African.
Yeah,
Now, I was, before the COVID, I was in Addis Ababa,
yeah,
and I attended a global conference on cereals. And their time came when about 12 companies in Addis Ababa were able to export grains worth $240 million. That's what they received, and they were given awards by the Minister of Trade.
that's in Ethiopia.
In Ethiopia, there in that country, no foreigner is allowed to export anything called grain by law. So what happens in this country is that we gravitate so easily towards any foreigner can come into this country and register anything, and tomorrow is bidding just like any other.
Okay.
We don't protect our own.
Okay.
As a committee, we have made it very clear to them, we really want to have a list of companies that are going to provide services under the local content law. So that is something that we are already enforcing, and boss, Peter, we would want to have that sooner than later.
And that's why Peter is, that's the role to participate
That is the
in
role,
local content.
the role of,
There are actually two things.
Yeah.
I attended one of the sessions in Parliament.
Yeah.
And I think there was a question also of how local is local.
Yes.
And I remember when the king of Bunyoro came to Parliament and met a committee, I think they also presented and said, you see, the oil production and everything will create a bigger environmental impact, social impact on our people. They are interacting with our girls, they are interacting with our communities and all this, and the damage that social interaction creates will be far bigger than probably on what Kisoro will face or even Nebi will face, you see. And so the question was, how local will local be? That question came in. So I think, Peter, it is important in terms of the transparency and openness of everything for Ugandans to appreciate and accept and say this is ours. I think even the 40% should be weighed in terms of the quality, not just numbers. Because, and for me, I will come back to you, it is not the Peters and Malingas, it will be MPs to dig deep into that. That if the Chinese are the ones supposed to produce this service, they should not say the 40% are mostly the casual laborers, the drivers, casual laborers, and people who dig the roadside. It should also include the managers, so that Ugandans would know that we are really benefiting. And for me, as we go for the break, we should, that blame will be, the buck will stop with the MPs to do. on behalf of all of us.
I mean, they've handed the obligation to us.
Yeah, because we
have no role there.
But also people will hide.
They are the ones who are doing procurement.
Yes.
MBs are now bigger MBs only on MTN. When you load a daily bundle of 250 shillings, you no longer get 15 MBs, you get 30 MBs. For 500 shillings, you no longer get 40 MBs, you get 80 MBs. For 1,000 shillings, it's no longer 100 MBs, it's 180 MBs. Dial *150*10# or use the My MTN app to load bigger daily bundles only on MTN. MTN is regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission.
Raising voices.
As a community member, I think we need to change in the way we act in response to violence against children. In my small way, I can be a leader in preventing violence in my community. I promise to work with my neighbor to create violence-free homes and communities for our children.
In this time of COVID, what is your promise to the children of Uganda? Because a violence-free childhood is everyone's right. Raising voices.
Double MBs for the same price on daily bundles with Airtel. Now you get double MBs for twice your enjoyment. For 250 shillings, you now get double. That's 30 MBs. For only 500 shillings, you get 80 MBs. And for 1,000 Uganda shillings, enjoy 180 MBs, all valid for 24 hours. Dial *175# or use the My Airtel app to enjoy double MBs on your daily bundles for the exact same price. With Airtel, the smartphone network.
Your MBs are now bigger MBs only on MTN. When you load a daily bundle of 250 shillings, you no longer get 15 MBs, you get 30 MBs. For 500 shillings, you no longer get 40 MBs, you get 80 MBs. For 1,000 shillings, it's no longer 100 MBs, it's 180 MBs. Dial *150*10# or use the My MTN app to load bigger daily bundles only on MTN. MTN is regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission.
COVID-19 is still here with us. As Professor Maggie Chigozi states, the time is now for all of us to get vaccinated.
When we have one person who's not vaccinated, it affects everybody around them, most especially the ones close to you. Keep your family safe. Anyone right now who's over 18 should go and get vaccinated.
Because of the new COVID-19 circulating variants like Omicron, it is very important for all of us to be fully vaccinated with 2 doses of the same vaccine type. It's only those getting Johnson & Johnson who receive only a single dose to be fully protected.
Even after vaccination, continue to adhere to all SOPs by wearing a mask properly, covering your mouth and nose, washing your hands regularly with soap and clean water, or using an alcohol-based sanitizer, maintaining physical distance of at least 2 meters from others, and avoiding crowds. Echa COVID-19, chija kugwa. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF and partners.
Enjoy convenience today with Airtel Money School Pay. Dial *185#. Select option 6, school fees. Select option 2, school pay. Select option 1, pay fees. Enter student number. Enter the amount. Enter the PIN number to complete payment. Beat the back-to-school hustle today. Pay school fees conveniently using Airtel Money. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
Welcome back from the break, and this is Behind the Headlines this Wednesday, the 23rd of February 2022, and we are discussing the prospects for Uganda's oil industry in the economy, and we have a panel of experts, both from the legislative arm and as well as the technical gurus for the oil industry. We have We have Peter Mulisa from UNOC. We have Hani Malinga from the Ministry of Energy. We have Paul O'Mara from Parliament, Budget Committee. We have Honorable Jara Mapenduzi from local government, and we have Councillor Sarah Birete. Before we went for the break, Peter, there were a lot of questions, and I wanted to give you just 1 or 2 minutes to wind up on them, including there was the question of spending at source, whether it is the right thing. I want us first finish those responses, and then I bring in, because there is a plethora of questions and comments that have come, I need us to go into them, and then we can bring in the rest of your colleagues. But first respond quickly, Peter.
Thank you, Charles, and fellow panelists for very good questions and discussion. Let me start with, I think, what is really important to everyone. National and local participation.
Yes.
So national content and local content. Now, the laws that we have and the regulations that we have, both upstream and midstream, give priority to Ugandan citizens, entities owned by Ugandan citizens, and Ugandan companies in procurement, all procurement. If the services or goods are not available in Uganda, for instance, we don't produce pipes for the pipeline, so those ones will have to come from some other place. We don't have rigs, so those would have to come from other places, and the other technical services that we can't provide in Uganda. If the services are not available in Uganda, they can be procured outside Uganda. But preferably, if there's a JV between a Ugandan company and an external company, that can be given priority. Now, that is how the law is structured. And what we've looked at in defining a Ugandan company, we've largely looked at companies that are present here, that are working here, that are contributing to the economy, that are employing our people, that are using our resources, that are present here. So if you have a company that has been here producing steel for the last 20 years and it has been contributing to the economy, that company is Ugandan in all forms and shape. Even if it's not 100% owned by Ugandans, or if Ugandans have little shares in that company has been here, it's been creating value in this country. We must give it an opportunity to produce that steel and supply it to the oil and gas sector. So that's how we look at it. But I can also confirm that when we were doing exploration, the spend was upwards of 3 billion, about 3.2 billion. Ugandan citizens and Ugandan entities based here were able to pick 28% of that. And at that point, we hadn't really prepared our people, we hadn't trained our people. There was little experience in oil and gas. So in this period of development and production, we believe that we should do better in terms of percentage retention of the capex spend here. So that's the way the laws are structured.
Okay.
How do we enforce these laws? So Uganda National Oil Company, it's part of the work I do on a daily basis, and my colleagues. We sit in the joint venture as business players, and we tick boxes on, has national content been followed here? Is this company Ugandan? Has it been given due attention? And we manage it among the commercial entities that we play with. But after that layer, when we agree as commercial entities that national content and local laws have been followed, it goes to Petroleum Authority of Uganda for them to approve that we can award that contract. So Petroleum Authority of Uganda also look at the law, look at national content regulations, and if they have questions, if they are not sure that the laws have been followed, they will query and refuse that contract from being awarded. And it goes through that process. So by the time we award the contract, whether it is ECOP or Stilenga or Kingfisher, it goes through this process, these checks and balances. Okay. And we all tick off and say national content has been followed, please go ahead and award a contract. I'm aware of one contract that was actually cancelled and procurement had to restart because national content had not been followed about 2 years ago. So it is heavily regulated to make sure that people follow. So I want to confirm to our people that we are fighting, we are doing everything possible to follow the laws that were put in place to ensure that our people participate. And you will participate. Just avail yourself and compete, put your best foot forward. How about our people in the areas where oil is being extracted? So that is now local content. And local content has priority over national content. So if there is a service provider present in Burisa, Noya, Chikuve, Hoima, those areas, that person, entity is given priority even over the national content that is there. So all these layers have been taken care of in the laws. ECOP funding. Honorable Mapendus talked about ECOP funding. I just wanted to clarify. So ECOP is structured as a company. So there's a company called ECOP Co that owns ECOP as a project. And that company is funded by the shareholders. So UNOC is a shareholder with 15%. Tanzania has 15%. Total has 62%. And Sinuk has 8%. So we have a call on shares, a call on equity, and we pay our equity contribution. But to fund it, we've done a mix of equity and debt. That debt is not government debt. It is debt that is sourced through project finance by the shareholders, UNOC, Sinuk, Total, and TPDC. And it is also not debt that is collateral based. It is debt that is based on the revenues that will be generated from the project, so project finance. Okay. And so the revenues of the project will pay the debt.
Okay.
And the shareholders will be able to do that.
Okay.
Just finally, PFMA amendment that my sister spoke about.
Public Finance and
Public Finance Management
Act. Yeah.
And indeed, we've joined the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, and we are putting our submissions. So everything we are doing is going to be available on the website, and people can download and read. And that's the level of transparency that we have committed ourselves to. But PFMA amendment, why did we have to amend? So UNOC is in the upstream sector. We hold 15% in Terenga. There are 2 blocks under Terenga and Kingfisher. Right now, as I indicated at the beginning, we are not paying our requirements for upstream because Total and Sinuk are paying on our behalf. But when production starts, we shall be required to answer our cash calls. Okay. And so the flexibility to be able to answer our cash calls required that we amend the Public Finance Management Act. But we were cognizant that we need to retain parliamentary oversight and appropriation power. So what the act now says is that we will retain revenues required for that year, our commitments that year, but we will not spend a penny until Parliament appropriates for us those amounts. And so appropriation is still
parliamentary.
So
okay.
the measures are still there.
Okay. Allow me, gentlemen and lady, pick there are a number of messages and comments that are coming from the public. My producer, kindly bring them. Barije Claveri from Barara says, is all oil going to Tanga? And if so, how will Ugandans enjoy it? And how do you tell Ugandans that they see the first oil when you haven't paid people where the pipeline passes? Anthony in Rubaga says, here in Uganda, government programs are never completed within the stated timelines. I'm just wondering if 2025 will finally be. Thank you. Michael Polot from Palisa says that oil will not be seen by any Ugandan. Those are still collected team of liars, and only amazing thing is our parliament, they just appropriate taxpayers' money without demanding for accountability. Odokongero Ivan Danish from Kitgum, I want to say that our political leaders and technocrats should stop telling us what they think we want to hear and not what is real. Let us not, some word is missing. Maybe he wants to say, Let us not increase expectations of the citizens, yet offer below it. Odokongero, I wish you could tell us what you know that we don't know, so that we can then judge the right information. Isaac Gusimenta, a graduate of oil and gas engineer, he says, my emphasis is that it's high time the government and oil companies start recruiting graduates, because as we near production, we need this workforce. Isaac, and I know that we need to write shorthand on social media sometimes, but kindly write correctly so that we can read more easily the information. Christopher from Lira City says, Ugandans shall be grateful to see their owned oil be used globally. Our Ugandan young people really write poor English, I must admit. I don't know why. But my concern is 45 months being said. Trust me, that will be 60 months, not as they said. My appeal is we need transparency 100% in this oil project. I hope that you gentlemen and ladies are picking this information. Some of the writing is really jumbled up, but the message is being picked. Yesiga Philip says, ask the Commissioner Petroleum why fuel pump prices are still high. The minister went silent. Malinga, you see that? Yesiga Philip is asking you a direct question there. Very interesting. You need to respond to that in the course of discussion. Julius Bigirwa in Chikube, my question is, when are you paying the affected persons of the pipelines corridors? They signed your papers. It is now 2 years. Kule Joshua in Kasese. My question is, will the fuel prices reduce, or will it be as usual? And will this oil improve on the economy of Uganda, and at which percent? Give me like 3 others, starting with this one. Birunji Prisi says, I have some investors who are interested in getting pumping work. What is the procedure?
Which pumping?
Peter, you have called for them. Now they have started arriving.
I like dealing with this one.
Malinga, let me start with you. Fuel prices. By the way, people say, there are many people who remarked and said, that's how some cartels want to push prices unrealistically. They create a crisis, then it goes up, then it will never come down. And that is how prices have been going. And then someone yesterday, now you see how perceptions get crafted. Some people were saying on radio that now it has gone to soap, that prices of soap have also started shooting up.
Yeah. Oil, sugar.
More than double.
Exactly. So, and it will not come down even if there are changes. But Malinga, for you now, it's about the prices of fuel.
Yes, dear viewers, yes, we had the challenge towards the end of last calendar year, which crossed over to 2022. The requirement of mandatory COVID test at the border created a challenge. That's why we had that backlog. Now, because of that backlog, trucks could not come in, both for fuel and the dry goods. So when you see prices of sugar, soap going up, it means the raw materials for those things were also blocked. Prices are around now 5,000 shillings per litre. By the time we closed last year, the barrel of oil was about $74. As we talk now, the barrel is about $95. So the crude price, as it goes up, it means it translates to the pump prices. And we all know what's happening now globally. There's the issue of geopolitics. Then too, at the time when this issue happened is when we're opening up the economy. So the cars which had been parked for 2 years, they are now on the road. And for Uganda, we liberalize the palm prices. It is demand supply. So if the demand is high and the supply is low, definitely the prices go up. But we know that 5,000 as of now is the average price. If you compare the dollar of 74 per barrel to now a barrel at 95, you find that there is that increase. So that's why we are looking at it. But also, I don't want to put fear. What is happening now? If you read, you see now even in the US, things are going up because of the challenges which are happening within the region, Europe, whereby if there is no gas coming into Europe, if the supply chain has been interrupted, then it affects us.
But you know, the complaint usually is that the issues happening in US, in Russia, affect Uganda, and more than it affects Rwanda and the other countries around the region. So how does that
Mr.
work?
Maringa, before you come in,
yes.
I think what is very problematic for us as citizens, what was the trigger of these fuel prices rising up? The trigger was COVID regulations.
Yes.
COVID regulations are solved, the prices keep going up. If you are saying it is international dynamics, which could have an element, but not to that extent, that we are faced with as citizens. There is an element of global prices, but to a limited extent. The price that citizens are paying today is because of the mafias, is because of lack of proper regulation and the lack of oversight over that sector.
You know,
and to be specific, let me share. For example, my vehicle, I used to fill the tank with 270,000. Now it's 450. Imagine all that increment. It is not fair, it is not justified, and it is not just the global element.
Just more information.
Yeah.
His overview is more technical. But what Councillor Birete has said is the correct thing. The prices were normal until a decision was made by government to test drivers at the border. Then there were delays now. You know, the trucks built up, and that triggered increases in prices. But the Committee of Trade made a presentation. They went and did research and made a presentation to Parliament. They discovered something which was completely shocking. The period where the prices started increasing, actually December, January, and even October, had the highest ever in 12 months of oil imports into the country.
Yes.
So we increased prices at a time when we had brought a lot of oil into the country.
Yes.
And much of that oil were imported by two companies, Total Energies and Shell. Those two companies imported the biggest. Now, the question is, the irony is, if at the time when you had even imported less, the prices were low, were stable. Now here you have imported more. So it's basically a cartel.
Yeah.
And we even asked the minister responsible to really apply the laws which we have given him, you know, onto these cartels. Because this is unfair to the citizens.
And moreover, out of COVID hardships, you are allowing thuggery of the citizens to that extent.
So fuel is one single factor that has created, has actually exacerbated the serious economic situation that our citizens had faced for a very long time. And it affects everyone, because from transport, for persons, and for goods and services, and we need it for production. So at the end of the day, it creates an inflationary environment which is unwarranted.
People cannot
and we
afford
have a government in place
Can I just say this?
you know, to deal with the matters.
In just 1 minute. I appreciate how the commissioner brought it, but you see, to me as an ordinary citizen.
You're not ordinary.
As of now.
Well, I am speaking on behalf
on behalf of, I agree.
Yes. I am speaking on behalf of the ordinary citizens, and so I have to be
that
ordinary.
one is okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
You know, Mr. Commissioner, the explanations you give do not add up. however honest you would want to be. Because Ugandans will then ask, when did this begin? Precisely as you said, when the Minister of Health decided to do the compulsory test. Correct. And then the Energy Minister came and said, you know, this is the problem and we are trying to address it. That problem has been addressed. Okay? The borders got opened, the trucks are flowing normally. Why then is your ministry not able to step forward and say, look, this was created by a situation which has been addressed, and therefore this is what we, you know, Charles.
And he rightly stated that their ministry is in charge of licensing and policy, and you know.
Yes.
You know,
2/3 increment.
There was a day I almost refused
a
to
little
breathe.
fuel.
And let me tell you this. That day, a very senior government official said, you know, there are people who are trying to take advantage and, you know, manipulate Ugandans. The best you can do is to boycott their products.
The Prime Minister.
That is being irresponsible. You don't, this is a government. If there are people who want to create problem in the country, you hold them accountable. There are ways you can deal with them. You regulate this. And so for me, this kind of excuses, you know, the local man and woman down there is suffering. Salt right now, you buy it more than 1,000 shilling.
Soap is at 8,000.
Above, you know, 8,000. It's abnormal. And then we are comfortable in our offices. We think Ugandans are in a terrible situation. And so,
well said. And I think Malinga, I think there are two things. First, by the way, yes, you can have that excuse, which is more technical, explainable. But the truth of the matter is, the same people you work with pass the right information, the facts as they are, to us in the media, to MPs. And then if you come and try to, you know, gloss over it, the public out there is looking at you and they're saying, now look at this one. What is he saying? Including your own colleagues who know the truth.
Charles, just imagine if the ministry had filled the belly of our reserves in ginger, for example. We only needed $40 million to do that. Why don't we have reserves? Then they would just use at this moment of crisis to say, we are going to supply fuel companies with oil from our reserves, subsidized at a low price. You tell me Shell and Total would be doing what they're doing now, and some of the small companies would be following. It is a strategic resource. We should have planned for it.
Now
and that would have stopped this kind of escalating crisis.
Give him time to respond to that, so that we move to...
as the honorable members have observed, they have also the information. How much is a liter of kerosene? It's about 3,300.
Of course, they increase everything.
There is that tax component which is adding up those values. Unless you say we reduce on the tax.
How much is that?
Has tax started with the COVID
diesel has its own tax, so is the petrol. So kerosene, which has minimum tax, which is targeting the locals, it is about 3,200 per litre. So that is the information which you should dig.
Mr. Commissioner, I just want to ask a question.
What exactly do you mean, man?
What is that?
There is a big tax component on a litre.
I wanted to find out whether the taxes came in December.
Yes, did the taxes come with the COVID testing?
Because I think, Charles, if you could permit me to also weigh in on this one. There are many questions I've written from the viewers. But I think we probably need to do a more comprehensive discussion on this. To first of all do an analysis of the region and what the dollar prices are in the countries that surround us, to see if we are out of range, and if we're out of range, by how much. I've seen comparisons, I think in the early Jan, somewhere in Jan, right. And we were actually lower.
We are the last,
we are lower than some of the countries that we pick from. Then I also wanted to look at how we quickly move the logistics that bring the fuel here. We run an open tender system in Kenya and in Tanzania for the region. It's a competitive process. The best price wins to supply the market. So it's a competitive, open process. Now in Uganda, can actually a cartel form in downstream? I don't think it's possible. Largely because we have about more than 130 companies that are licensed and that run petrol stations. They are all dying to take an extra percentage of the market. So the competition is real between them. It's very difficult for two, even if they control 40% of the market, to create a cartel situation, because the others will come to sweep their percentage. So there are real dynamics that at an international level that are forcing the prices to go where they are. And they, of course, the pump price has many components.
But the question again, Charles, is why is it that when prices go up in internationally, our pump prices go up? When it comes down, ours don't come down.
No, I mean, there is
that has been the trend all the time. So when it has gone up, we can explain it this way.
74 to 95. Now it is 1,000.
That will take me to. That will take us back to the other Nyankole saying that I like. But the day that my ship gets lost,
it's when your dog defecates. Yes.
Is when your dog defecates the skin of a sheep. Is it a coincidence?
But I think there are solutions, and there are some countries that have started deploying certain solutions. And I think that's a conversation we should have.
Yeah.
So the international dynamics and the local dynamics, because we create some components of what the pump price is through our local arrangements. Is there something we can do to make sure that the international dynamics that are beyond our reach their impact can be reduced? And I think that's a conversation that we should have from Parliament to Executive.
But Peter, if I may have a quick interjection on that very point.
Yes.
That's precisely the reason the reserves were created. But I think the recent media coverage, now you are renting out all the reserves. We have no fuel reserves.
So that is under us, and I can explain.
It's under you, actually.
Yes. So we have a storage terminal in Jinja that was initially intended to keep reserves. It's 30 million liters, 20 petrol and 10 diesel. Now, the consumption in Uganda today, per day, is 6.5 million liters. So the 30 million liters is about
5 days?
4 days. 4 days.
5 days, 6
4
days.
point something days. So it's really, really small. And what happens is that for you to fill those reserves, let us assume that a liter sitting in a reserve is $1. If you consider the pricing, it's slightly higher. So let's assume $1.
So that is $30 million.
That is $30 million that you have to inject. And what we thought as Uganda National Company is that if we have this money, we could put that product in and keep running it. It doesn't sit there. You sort of have it in your logistic structure, but it is turned around and it's improving. You're getting more money from it. But in terms of stabilizing the market, it's not enough. So what are we doing? We are looking at building a bigger terminal. It's one of the projects that we're working on, a 320 million liter terminal, because we've seen that in other countries, strategic reserves are 60 days consumption requirement, or 90 days. For some countries, it's even more than that. And so we are looking at doing that. But the law, the Petroleum Supply Act, also requires that every entity that has the license to downstream should at all times maintain 10 days stock of its market share. So the idea would basically be, if you have 10 days stock in each of the oil marketing companies, then you have strategic reserves of, say, 4 days. By and large, the country is covered for 15 days. It's not enough. So we have to now start learning from this shock to investing later.
We are sitting duck.
No, we are not. That's why I'm saying that. That's why I'm saying that we have a project that we are working on constructing to increase the reserves. But we are also working on improving the logistics over the lake. So a pipeline from Mombasa to Kisumu, and we pick from there over the lake. So it eases. Once the logistics are easy, then you're able to supply. But Charles, if you could permit me to pick some of the questions.
Yes, respond to some of the questions, like 2 minutes, I think, and Malinga, maybe 2 or 3 other questions will respond, and then the colleagues here. So
let me start with the business person who has investors that are interested in pumping. Those are the things I'm very interested in. Ugandans who want to participate. So I'm not sure that what is required is you register on the National Supplier Database, go to our website, go to the websites, and bid for jobs. That's number one. 45 months will become 60 months. And the concern is that government projects tend to not to get finished in time. So let's say, for clarity's sake, that these projects are being driven by private sector investors. So the operators of Tirenga are Total. They are going to lead in the construction. So I can assure you, based on the fact that we are working with international companies that have significant experience, that will finish these projects on time. And first oil will be here the first quarter of 2025 or possibly the last quarter of 2024. So we can trust the entities that are doing these projects. When a crude oil pipeline project affected person is going to be compensated, we've done everything in preparation for compensation. We have now, the shareholders have put money in the bank account of ECOP. The compensation is going to start probably early next week. In the next 2 weeks, we should be able to start compensating the people. I'm aware that we've had meetings the last week and this week preparing on the compensations. We had financial literacy trainings, bank accounts were opened. Everybody is now ready to receive the payments, and so that's going to be concluded. I think I will leave it at that, and my colleague can pick from there.
There was Isaac on recruiting graduates. I think it's ongoing. Some of us are graduates from Makerere. There are even many universities and training institutions which now are churning out professions in oil and gas. The other thing which I want to tell Isaac is that in addition to your degree, go for a professional course. You can go to Kigumba, you get that international certification, which gives you an upper edge when you're looking for a job. Even the drivers, it is not just saying I know how to drive. There is certain certification which you get from these training institutions. So the recruitments are going on. They are advertising jobs. 2 weeks ago, there's a team from one of the service providers, Slambaji. When they listed how many Ugandans are internationally working, even those ones who are based in Mozambique serving Uganda, we get proud of it. Because when Slambaji came, I think in 2004-05, they picked graduates and they took them for training. So when those ones come back, I think we shall be proud as Ugandans. So there's a recruitment going on, but people have to be strategic. We have to be strategic. Otherwise, it's not just saying that I have a degree, I'm from Ustema, you should have certification. Then I think we have talked about the fuel prices, which he has talked. Why is all the oil going to Tanga? The arrangements we have is that we have 2 destinations, one to the refinery and the other to the crude export pipeline. The refinery, that is being promoted by government of Uganda, the crude export pipeline by the JVs, the lakes. So when the refinery comes on board, there is a requirement that the first call should be refinery, the 60,000 barrels, then the balance goes per day. So that is the arrangement. And I think that's that. Is there another thing?
Okay. Mr. Honorable Omara, I know that we have now about 15 minutes.
On issues of land compensation.
Yeah.
I think as the honorables help the local districts. You find, for example, a district like Chotara doesn't have the compensation rates. You have to depend maybe on Loengo. Then at times you find other crops or other items are not listed. But if things are done early, that's the basis. And the other thing which I told one time, I think people from NEBI, don't look at these compensation rates vis-a-vis oil. When it comes to other things, they use that. And one time I think the chief government valuer said, you people, you want 30 million per acre of cassava. Now you have cows. Are you ready if your cow went and ate the neighbor's cassava? And you will be ready to pay the 30 million because that's the rate which the court will based on. So let us have fair compensation rates.
Okay. We are left with about 14, 15 minutes. But Honorable Omara, there is the other question on this same oil thing, the prospects for it. That if it starts coming out by 2025, or even, let's say, certain things don't work according to projections, maybe 2 years later or even 5 years later, 2027, 30. By that time, maybe the value of our oil will be nothing to talk home, to take home or talk about.
Thank you.
Is that still a viable argument to make?
Yeah, it is a very serious argument to make. When we were in Chankwanzi, we had a very robust discussion with the president because he really did a fantastic presentation, his thought process and all that. And also the conversation encompassed the discussion on oil. Now, some of us, we had actually had a global outlook of where the world is going. The world is moving towards clean energy, which is basically solar and electric vehicles and so forth. Charles, you'll recall that there was a Paris Agreement of December 2015, which actually brought international and multilateral agencies and governments together, where they signed an agreement basically to manage global warming. And that conversation was to make the world to do something. Every country had what actually they call national determined contribution, where they do something within a 5-year period and report when they finally meet. And the purpose is to reduce global warming by 2%, so that we can cool the earth, so that we can live here. One of the major contributors to global warming is the greenhouse emissions and then carbon emissions. Recently, also EU made a very strong commitment to basically move towards zero carbon emissions. By UK by 2050, and by 2030, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson said, by 2030, they don't want to see any vehicle in United Kingdom that has either diesel or petrol engines. These include cars and vans.
By 2030?
Yes, and they said they will achieve that target 5 years earlier than they had projected. So that by 2050, there is a zero carbon. Zero carbon. And that is where the world is going. And they're bringing in disruptive technologies. There is regulations going on. There is, he talked about it earlier, the environmental issues, which is actually going to stop these oil companies from investing anything which is carbon.
Carbon emissions.
And that is why my conversations all along, and I want to play devil's advocate here. And I know that when we get this oil, we can use it to build the money from the oil, to quickly build our infrastructures, the roads, the rails, and the other things that we want to talk about, to give us really the infrastructure we need for development. But we should have done this thing much, much earlier than we are talking about it now. So if you look at 2030, and these European countries, they're the ones that manufacture cars. We don't. We are trying this one at Kira, but we are still importing spare parts and other components from outside. When they reach that time, they will say no more manufacturing of any diesel or fuel vehicles. And in this consideration for 2030, they also include the hybrid cars, which means the ones that have one component could be carbon engine, the other one is electric. Even those ones. So the emission standards for EU is the highest ever. So I worry because so far we have invested over $4 billion in building these oil infrastructures. Now, if we are caught in the middle, what is it that we are going to do? First, we would have accumulated substantial amount of debt as a country. And every time now you have a conversation, they will say, our oil is coming. Our oil is... We should never plan with oil. And we are having the conversation with the Minister of Finance, and the PSST is aware about this thing, where we do certain things without oil revenues, so that we find other ways of generating income without looking at oil. So my worry is, first, accumulated debt as a country, and we need to extrapolate the numbers, and we see, if we continue to borrow, and something catches us in the middle, how are we going to turn around and, first of all, pay the debt, and also be able to have sustainability in terms of meeting our budget expenditures over the period of time? Okay,
Malinga and Peter will respond as we close. I will take from the thoughts, the concerns from Sarah and Honorable Mapinduzi, and then Malinga and Peter wind up as they respond to those concerns.
Okay, maybe if I may build on
the environmental aspects.
Yes, environmental aspects. I think that's one aspect of climate justice, or protecting the environment, and then the global climate movement of moving away from carbon emissions and, you know, a shift from oil, which I think the planners should have in mind among their risk plans, and should have a risk mitigation plan that they should tell the country. They shouldn't, because this is a public resource.
Yeah.
It does not belong to any of you. All of you are acting in trust of the people.
Yeah.
So what is the risk mitigation plan? And what are the concrete plans for climate justice? If I may borrow the words of the African proverb on the tortoise and the hard shell. The tortoise, however hard and ugly the shell is, it's the one that protects it on all its journey on Earth. So as I did mention the environmental concerns, and I did mention, and indeed it's true, that all our environmental assessment plans have some gaps that should be filled. We do not raise these issues in bad faith. We are raising these issues that you go and fill the gaps as you begin the bigger investment projects. If you say this is the talk of the people, then tomorrow we will have no place to call our country. The snow is going on Mount Rwenzori. So these environmental concerns should be taken seriously, mitigated at earlier stages, and addressed. We all have one place to call a country. 25 years, there will be no oil. Which country will your children inherit? Which country will our grandchildren inherit? That should be the concern of everybody as we excite citizens about oil prospects. I thank you.
Okay, Honorable Mapinduzi.
Without unnecessary repetitions, I know, just as we said, there are lots of opportunities that we have, and I think Ugandans have to adequately prepare to take advantage of all these opportunities. Several jobs will come with the oil presence and all that. We will have companies that will have to provide services, training opportunities, and even increasing our foreign direct investment and so on. But what is most important is how much do we have to do as a country? One, to very jealously guard what we have as a country, and use it for the good of the citizens. That is very key. The other one is how we are going to all people charged with the responsibility of executing those assignments, how are we going to hold them accountable so they do the right thing? Because I think one of our major problems in this country is that when we send people to do things, they do it their way. We have, I would say, the poorest level of compliance. Even the environmental aspect she's talking about is all about compliance. We may have the best laws, but at the end of the day, we tend to ignore what we come up with. So compliance is very important. How do we seriously begin to look at what we have as a country and own it and do things with the kind of love that we should demonstrate for this country? Finally, my brother Omara, the Honorable Omara, and my sister Sarah bring in a perspective that is very key. But I think as a country we should begin to look at what Britain, the United Kingdom, is talking about from a different angle. Because it should be about, we should not be driven by fear. If the United Kingdom is talking about turning around and beginning to use different technologies by 2030, what do we learn from that as a country? And how do we technically defeat them? Because there are so many other products that can come from what we have already, what we have got. We may not be able to have the opportunity to sell to them oil, but what else do we? So we need to, and I think we need to invest heavily, so we can support our technical people to aggressively look at how we can defeat certain things that create fear for us as a country. But above all, I think apart from raising expectation and apart from issuing statements that appear not to be very coordinated, sometimes we say this and the next day we are not able to even defend what, apart from all those, I think the steps that have been taken so far. I recently, just as Ladit Charles put it recently, we went with a team, the Parliamentary Forum on Tourism and Wildlife Conservation. We went to Masishon and we were interested. We wanted to see what is going on. The roads, the road you are talking about, and there are a lot of activities going on. But I think we need to be very cautious, and like a colleague pointed out to the Uganda Wildlife Authority and said, look, I have seen the road being constructed. I don't see provision where an animal like hippo can cross from the other side, and because the road is high up there, and we said, when are you going to begin creating this provision? And they said, in the design it's there. We have also noticed, and we should not begin saying, it was there in the design, and then we need to plan things, and the moment we have a clear plan, we stick to that. Okay. So we can,
Okay, thanks. Mr. Malinga, respond to some of those issues, but especially from your role of being in charge of policy and leading government for the sector, the concern about the fast-moving, disruptive technologies, especially from the developed world, and that could potentially hurt whatever we are planning and just unravel everything, and then we are stopped in the wake of anything, and 5 years from now they say you cannot use this fuel at all. Okay. Is there a plan for Plan B, as they say, or Plan C, or even Plan 5?
Just they're talking about chemical industries. We'll take them to chemical industry. I don't buy that.
Thank you, Charles.
The drugs, we are now going to put it on tarmac.
Members for those observations.
Yeah.
The issue of climate change, global warming, is real. But some of us who did some bit of science, if you look at the history of this earth, one time we had the ice age, where the world was just covered with ice. We had those dinosaurs. they disappeared. So what we are going through now is a cyclic thing. Now, people are talking of going for electric cars. This morning or yesterday, I was reading about the issue of those big two countries. Why Indian says, no, I want to make sure that this rare earth where you get the lithium batteries are protected. We might be talking of batteries now. Time will come when it comes to how do you handle the waste. It will also become an issue. So let us think loudly and clearly. On the issue, what are we planning? We are planning a lot of things. There is energy mix. Instead of depending on this one, we should also have other things. On the issue of related to energy mix, there is now a new talk about green hydrogen, where you now use little hydrogen to generate power. Instead of having these big dams, you just have a system to generate hydrogen, which does the combustion, whatever, to get the other one. As it does the combustion, you get water. We are also talking about nuclear. Though also there have been question marks. If you look at countries like Germany, they have been depending on the nuclear. They have phased out. They are phasing out coal. They have been relying on gas. We don't know what happens if things continue the way they are. But you see, that's the whole thing. So as a government, we are looking at this. COP26, I think some of the resolutions, some countries, after leaving the conference, they said, no, this is not difficult. Africa continent is saying, COP27, which will be in Egypt, it is now time for us to say, let us also reach your level before we go for the transition. We can still use these cars for the next 30 or 50 years.
But you are a poor man, and the poor man has no choice.
You know, we are now becoming global. We can also raise our things. Yes.
Okay, fine. We shall see. We will be here. 10 years, 20 years. I am very hopeful.
The international oil companies are global companies. They're
Oh,
not
yes.
us. They are regulated from Europe and Americas. If those countries tell them we no longer want you in any carbon related investments, get out or you are punished.
Just one conference.
One conference and they are gone.
One.
And we are nothing by
They
the way.
will name it the Geneva Conference.
The withdrawal of petrol and diesel engines.
That's why
conference.
That's why Total the other day they also we signed an MOU on the renewable. So it is also matching.
Okay. Finally, Peter.
Thank you, Charles. Just to confirm that yes, this issue is understood, and last year in August, Parliament passed a Climate Change Act in Uganda. I've read it; it has very good provisions, especially the ones that deal with resilience, because for Africa and for Uganda in particular, the reality is that climate change impacts are going to hit us, and they are going to largely hit farmers. And so we must be able to build the resilience. So for us as a sector, oil and gas is actually a source of capacity to build the resilience because climate change is going to hit us. But I was privileged sometime last year to sit in a room that had CEOs of at least 15 of the biggest oil and gas producing companies in the world. And it was a CEO summit in Abu Dhabi. And the conversation was energy transition. As a sector, what do we do? There is a lot of movement of assets to diversify, but all the data that these companies and independent entities have come up with predict that we shall have in the world energy mix for at least the next 30, 40 years, fossil fuels will still play a key role. So there is a real reality based on data that has been collected by these companies and other independent entities that we are going to have oil and gas, with gas gaining more prominence in the next 30 to 40 years. So our crude oil will still have market in the next 30, 40 years. There's also another reality that is so African. 68% or thereabout of our people in sub-Saharan Africa have no access to electricity. Is that an opportunity for the sector itself? And the answer is yes. But there is another reality that the whole of Africa, north to south, east to west, contributes only 3.8% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. So that's when now I go back to my learned friend's comment of justice in the energy transition. Is it just energy transition, or we have to start discussing a just energy transition, where states that are poor, that are going to be heavily impacted by climate change, must be given a different roadmap from, say, the developed countries that have contributed most and are still contributing most to the greenhouse gas emissions. So we believe that COP27 and 28, the one in Egypt and the next one in UAE, in Abu Dhabi, will properly address this. But also on the technology. There are certain technologies that are largely being driven by oil companies, such as carbon capture and sequestration, which basically does what trees do to capture the carbon from the
carbon dioxide,
yes,
from the atmosphere.
Yes, and that technology is growing. In the US, there are pipelines now that are being constructed. In the UK, they have licensed all the fields that were decommissioned in the North Sea for storage of carbon. Okay. If this technology grows as fast as we think it will, there is a real chance that you can actually have technology solve the problem for us.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peter Mulisa from the Uganda National Oil Company. Thank you very much, Hani Malinga from the Ministry of Energy. I think this discussion is worth bringing back, especially on fuel, which is that one connector to so many things. We will need to have that discussion. Prepare to be roasted more for that next time when I invite you. Thank you very much, Paul Omara, and Honorable Paul Omara and Honorable Mapenduzi Ojara. And thank you very much, Sarah Birete, for a wonderful discussion had this evening. To you out there, keep following this discussion online and on YouTube. The discussion is going on, and on Twitter, the hashtag is UBC Behind the Headlines. Go there on those virtual fora and participate in the discussion now and later. And from the entire team here, I want to thank you all for participating in the show, especially those who send in and take time to share your thoughts. Keep it coming, and let's keep discussing these matters that are important for national development for our country. From the entire team here, from the production team, I want to say thank you very much. Until next week, God bless you. Bye-bye.
Airtel 4G smartphone. You get to enjoy free 1 GB data valid for a month and 100% bonus data every month for 3 months at only 250,000 Uganda shillings. This includes free data spread over 3 months worth 86,500 Uganda shillings, making the effective price of the 4G phone 163,500 Uganda shillings only. Visit the nearest Airtel shop and get one today. Airtel, the smartphone network.
COVID-19 is still here with us. As Sheikh Ramadan Muwajjeh, the Mufti of Uganda, states, let us all take the necessary precautions.
Prevention is always better than cure. Let's not go for prayers in mosques, congregational prayers, unless we are masked. Carry your own prayer mat, sanitize at the entrance. Let's all value the gift of life.
Because of the new COVID-19 circulating variants like Omicron, it is very important for all of us to be fully vaccinated with 2 doses of the same vaccine type. It's only those getting Johnson & Johnson who receive only a single dose to be fully protected.
Even after vaccination, continue to adhere to all SOPs by wearing a mask properly, covering your mouth and nose, washing your hands regularly with soap and clean water or using an alcohol-based sanitizer, maintaining physical distance of at least 2 meters from others and avoiding crowds. Echa COVID-19, chija kugwa. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF and partners.
Enjoy convenience today with Airtel Money School Pay, FlexiPay, or Bridge Schools. To pay school fees using Airtel Money for Bridge Schools, dial *185#. Select option 6, School Fees. Select option 1, Bridge Schools. Enter pupil ID. Enter the amount. Enter the PIN number to complete payment. Pay school fees conveniently using Airtel Money. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.